Director to open this new meeting of the first year of the new library, Public Library Board. First order of business, then we'll introduce ourselves as the new members. We'll start on this end with Vincent.
Vince Bourgeau. I've been on the board for a year now.
Dave Martinka, been on the board for 1 year also.
Geraldine Schellberg, I'm new, first meeting.
Sue Kimmel, I have been on the board for 1 year.
Dave Gosdick, I'm starting my 4th term on the board.
Marianne Klummick, I'm serving on my 4th term.
Holly Pustel, I'm starting my 3rd year.
Cheryl Jablinski, I've been on the board 1 year.
Marie Golden, I think I'm on my last of 6 years.
And I'm Chris Wiley. I've been library director for a year and a half.
I was asked by Chris to chair the opening meeting, so we elect officers. So the first business of the board would then be to elect officers, and the first office up for election would be the office of the president. I'll open it for nominations.
I will nominate Dave because he does such a good job.
I will second it.
Are there any other nominations? Will somebody move that nominations be closed then?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Otherwise, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Carried. And so now we elect a vice president who will serve in the absence of when the president can't be here. Are there any nominations?
How about, I'll nominate Vince.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I will second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations?
I will move that nomination cease.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of, well, it'd be by unanimous consent, but all in favor of Vince for vice president, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Carried. So now secretary used to have to actually take minutes, but now we have Kathy, Mary, I forget the name, terrible.
So we really don't need.
But I think we need officially meet as secretary.
It's part of the bylaws.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was wondering. But
So I
we don't
open the
need-
nominations for secretary of the board.
Holly, you were last year, weren't you?
You were going to say that.
I'll nominate Holly Postel.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations? And I'll call for a vote on Holly. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Carried. And then we do need a treasurer, although the treasurer doesn't do anything, really doesn't do anything either, but apparently we need one. So kind of a nomination for treasurer.
I'll nominate Cheryl.
I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Do I have a motion to close nominations?
I'll move to close nominations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Being none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of, I got it.
Cheryl.
Cheryl to be treasurer, say aye.
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 And opposed by the same sign? Carried. Okay.
Dave, can I butt in for a second? Maybe because the last two aren't doing anything, can we combine secretary and treasurer into one?
I will have to look at the bylaws. I don't believe so. I believe it has to be separate according to those
I mean,
bylaws.
if we can, I think we should go ahead and do that, but,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I think we're locked by the bylaws. But
yeah, I understand.
we need the selection of a Brown County Library Board representative. Now, I think you've served on that.
I'm still on it.
Okay. So,
I'm on by a county commissioner.
so
and so I'll just
we don't
stay.
have to. Do we
That's
have to
okay.
affirm that or anything?
I don't believe so, as long as by consensus, the board agrees that Marianne will continue.
Unless somebody else wants to do it.
I think she's doing a fine job.
And
And-
you've been over there, I understand what's going on too, so,
Yeah.
Well, this is the Brown County one. This isn't
Oh.
Traverse de Sioux.
okay,
Yeah, that's a different story.
that's right.
We also need to select a Traverse de Sioux board representative, and this is a very, I think, important position in lieu of that Traverse de Sioux has been undergoing some difficulties, and I think we certainly want to make sure we're represented. In the past, last year, Holly represented us, and I think she did a good job. So I think I will appoint her, and I ask you to ratify the appointment. Unless there's someone objects, we'll take Holly as. And I'll volunteer to be the alternate,
Thank you.
because I'd like to keep my eye on what's going on a little bit. The next thing would be the minutes from the November 12th meeting. Remember, we didn't, when I first started reading, I thought, whoa, but we didn't meet in December, so. Are there any additions or corrections or notes that you think should be added to the minutes as they were given? They're rather complete.
Well, it's gonna come up a couple of times. I just would like to go over this legacy funds with the problem they've had there. Just please explain the difference between the 50/50 sub-grants and regional programs.
Maybe we should wait until the
You wanna wait
library.
till later on for
To the
that?
report
That's
that
fine.
comes, yeah. Now we'll take that into note, and I think Mary
Yep.
reports on that, okay. Otherwise, we'll look for any additions or corrections to the minutes. If there are none, I would solicit a motion to approve the minutes as they stand.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Otherwise, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign, carried. Then we move on to the December 2015 financial report and summary. Chris Wiley.
That starts on page 7. We are completely through 2015. The budget is about 91% expended. However, we still have some expenditures going through this month. We should have everything closed by the end of this month, and you'll get a final budget in February. We have our computer equipment, our public computer chairs. Those invoices still need to be paid this month. Those are the two big ticket items. There are some books still being paid for, some office supplies, that sort of thing, that occurred in late December that will go through city clerk treasurers at the end of the month. All unexpended funds from 2015 will go into fund balance to be used at your discretion. That also then goes to city council for their approval when we do take money out, for example, for the lighting project that's going to come up later this year. I want to point out that this board in November approved using $7,500 for extra materials, books, audiobooks. And so that's why you're seeing an over 100% budget spent under books, audiovisual supplies. Also included in the audiovisual supplies was the $9,400 and $9,405 grant from the Minnesota Historical Society for the microfilm. So that's included in there as well. I do want to point out that I was mistaken when I told our selectors that they had an extra about $2,000 to spend on audiovisual materials, because that would have been overdrive materials. So these two numbers, audiovisual supplies and books, is about $2,000 more than we even expected. And that was because I didn't take into account the overdrive line item, which is $2,000. So it is more than usual. It looks at this point, we're $66,000 underspent. That will drop down. In 2014, we were $43,000 underspent. That went into fund balance. This, I don't know if I could guess, maybe there will be some adjustments, maybe $50,000 underspent. And again, that all goes into our fund balance for those projects that we know are coming up. I'd be happy to answer, one final thing, one end of the year purchase. Nathan Barron, our new IT person, was getting very good deals on copiers, printers, and ours was 7+ years old. And so we purchased for $6,750 a new copier. That is on page 9. You're seeing that as a capital expense. And that was something that I talked to Reg Vorwerk, our finance department head, and he agreed that we had the funds to go ahead and do that, and so I did. And they are going to recycle our old machine and not reuse it. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on the financial report?
So despite the fact that we're gonna have, we didn't spend as much as we said we were gonna, for those items where we did exceed 100% of the expected budgetary expenditures, is the next year's budget gonna be increased to compensate for that, or? Like for the audio visual, we went way over. So did we raise that for the forthcoming budget, or do we just leave
No.
it? Okay.
No, the $9,400 was a grant, and that's partly why it's so overspent. And the other reason was because you had agreed to give us extra money, which we didn't budget for this year. I think it would be the same. Looking at this year, one of the things that's going to come up is programming money, because we have very few funds from Legacy that are going to be available. So I anticipate coming to you in June or July and seeing how the budget is, and perhaps asking if we can use some of the money that we anticipate not spending for programs, because that's a $500 line item, and that's not going to cover it. I intend, when I do the budget for 2017, to ask you and ask the city council for more money for programming, including budgeting for summer reading program. Every year it's so difficult. The Friends are amazing, but our children's librarian is sending a lot of letters asking for donations to help us. And she's one of many people in the community asking groups for funding. I'd like to get that back into the budget.
One of the programs, generally, how much money per program?
A really good summer reading program is in the neighborhood of $3,000.
Okay.
Programs like Mary does can be anywhere from $150 if we do some advertising, up to $1,500 for someone. An example would be Kathy Wurtzer, who came last April. We had 100 people there. It's, in the neighborhood of $1,200 to $1,500.
Okay.
Any other questions on the finance? Otherwise, we'll move on to department activities, and the first report is from Chris again.
Just a couple of highlights from November. Our Friends, as I said, are an amazing group. They had their annual book sale in early November, and the revenue was just over $2,000, and they used that to support materials, to support programming. They are our major source of funding for the summer reading program, so big thank you to them. I wanted to point out our Assistant Library Director, Mary Brown, is so helpful to librarians. She has a knack for the technical details of our automation system. And in this particular case, one of the Traverse de Sioux librarians, the interlibrary loan specialist, came out to visit, and Mary helped her create a report that's used all over the system. I know she just recently helped Springfield, I think just in this past week, with another report. So big thanks for sharing her expertise to all the libraries. And I wanted to welcome Marge Hames. She was a retired public school paraprofessional, and she's joined us as a volunteer. And then I'm going to jump to the December reports. That's on page 24. Mary and I both had our annual performance reviews in December. We are just getting paperwork out to all of the rest of the library staff. That process gets completed in February. The library is partnering again with United Way for free tax prep services for the public. They had an introductory meeting. They're finalizing the schedule this week, we hope, and they will be there at the library providing those free tax services in the next couple of months, and we're very happy to partner with them. It's our second year of being a partner. St. Nick's Eve was on Saturday, December 5th. There was a story time and a craft project in the children's department, and then St. Nick was at the American Legion. Big community support for that. Yeah, we had fewer numbers, but we're really happy to be able to partner with the Legion. I believe there was Sister Cities, is that right, who helped partner with that? So it's great to have that community collaboration. 47 people attended the Minnesota Valley Civil War Roundtable meeting December 15th, which was a launch of the New Ulm Battery's history book. That was the best attendance I believe we've had, pretty close to the best attendance, and the best cake ever. The New Ulm Battery book is beautiful. It's available at the Brown County Historical Society and Guten Tag House, and the library is getting a copy into its catalog as well. Lisa Sieve, our reference librarian, submitted a grant application to the Minnesota Historical Society requesting about $9,500 to purchase microfilm of historic newspapers from the area. These are the ones that are printed in German. This is pretty much closing out the New Ulm-centered and Brown County-centered newspaper collection. This was what we received a year ago, and we're able to purchase some. Now we're finishing up, and then the question is, do we go out and get more from the Sleepy Eye area, from some of the other Brown County newspapers? That's a question that Lisa and I will talk about.
Will you store those then at the library, not at
Right.
the Historical Society?
Nope, at the library.
then? Library.
At the library, right. And then back to our friends. I'll finish off with them because they received a $5,000 donation from a New Ulm native this fall. So big thanks to him. And then the friends had a book fair at Barnes & Noble in Mankato and raised over $400. So they are just a great resource, and we're really happy to have that donation and to have the friends here in town. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can you give an update as to where we stand with the construction of the 5 little free libraries?
In fact, just before I came over, I met the young man who's going for his Eagle Scout, who's coordinating the project, and he was picking up the $100 gift card and going out to Design Home Center to get some plywood to start the project. He showed me the design. He's working with Sheldon Reiki on the design. Is hoping it'll have a window in the front, hoping for 2 shelves, and then he's supervising other Boy Scouts in the building of 5 of them. We know they're going to go in 3 parks. Katie Hiltner sent an initial letter to the 2 mobile home parks on either end, and it's my job now to be following up with them to see if they'll allow those to be placed there.
And then what role do we have in this then? Do we have to do any approvals of the designs or the placement or anything like that? Or is this all done through the Friends or?
The Friends have taken on being the fiscal agent
Okay.
for that $100 and for the grant request. Now, the United Way is going to pay that directly. If I would be happy to show you the design, I could put that in the packet next month.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see it.
I have let Park and Rec is involved in this as well. So we've let this Eagle Scout and Sheldon Reiki with Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth work on the design, and I know nothing about designing, so I gave that to them.
And then our responsibility then would be to supply the books or?
No, our responsibility was just getting all of these community partners together.
Oh,
So Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth are actually going to keep the books stocked.
okay.
Yeah.
So they have a supply of books or something? that
They,
The red shelf.
yeah, they pick up books, including at the library. People can donate books.
Yeah,
Oh.
we've got one up where we have our trailer, and then there's one little one in little town Lynn, Minnesota, right near the, and there's no problem. People come and take books, and they put books in.
I know
and
there's
it's-
one up on Indian Point Drive too, but I think that's a private one.
Now, Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth have said that they will keep them checked and stocked.
Okay.
But we'll also have park staff too, because 3 of them will be in the parks.
So none of the catalog books from the library will be in these?
No cataloged books.
No
No,
cataloged
these are donated materials
All right.
or discarded library materials.
So any of the stuff like from the book sales that the Friends of the Library have, if there's, nobody wants them, they can, Healthy, HCHY can use them?
They're small, though. So when you think about books, they're, I don't know, you have to meet all
maybe
age
15
levels.
or 20.
Right.
20 books or less, maybe.
Mhm.
Of course, my observation of what's left from these book sales, what's left there,
Yeah, they
Nobody
ain't,
wants.
yeah, they ain't too great either, yeah.
and it's the same up at the college. We'd go to $1 to 50 cents, 10 cents, and after that, they sell them by the pound. Any more questions? As we move on to programming by Mary Brown, and now's when you can ask your question about it.
was gonna ask a lot of the same questions.
Hello. Why don't I quick go through some of the programs we've done and we're going to do, and then we can talk about legacy and legacy funding if everybody's okay with that. I just want to mention that the Life Living series has started. The first event was this past Monday, and several of the board members were there. It was Boyd Hubert. We had 145 people. They really enjoyed it. It had a lot of smiles, people walking out, which is good because apparently the driving home was awful. So I'm glad they left smiling. The next event for that series will be this coming Monday, which is January 18th, Martin Luther King Day, and we're going to have Jared Sebesta. And if you're saying, I recognize that name, but I don't remember who that is, he was a former KARE 11 meteorologist, and he left that position because he wanted a better family work balance. He was finding in that position because he was the weekend meteorologist. He was working a lot of weekends, nights, holidays, so he wasn't able to spend the time with his family that he wanted to. So he's going to talk about making that transition and still finding financial independence even when you leave a big job like that. I hear he has a really quirky sense of humor, so I think it'll be equally funny. And then there will be one more event in that series. We skip a week. And the last one will be Monday, February 1st, and that will be Gary Eichten. If you recognize that name, he was on Minnesota Public Radio. He was the host of Midday. He has retired from that position a few years ago. And so he's just going to talk about the people that he interviewed and met with his work as a journalist. All events are being held at the New Ulm Community Center, and that is courtesy as a partnership with Park and Recreation. All events start at 7 p.m., and this is a partnership with United Way of Greater Brown County, New Ulm Community Education, the library, and Park and Recreation. So it takes all of us to make this work. And we did receive a grant for that program through Travis DeSue, a legacy grant, is also helping to pay for that program. So please come out. They're really good. We've got a really good lineup. I think you will enjoy it. Talk to your fellow board members who went. They'll tell you how awesome it was, hopefully. The Minnesota Valley Civil War Roundtable, they are going to meet next Tuesday, January 19th at 6:30 p.m. This month's topic is Our Army Nurses, Stories from Women in the Civil War, and that will be presented by author Dan Hoisington. The Sunday before, so this coming Sunday, is a new series starting on PBS, and part of the focus is, it's set during the Civil War, part of the focus is nurses and doctors of that time period, so that's kind of why they're doing this topic now. So if that is of any interest to you, I believe the program is called Mercy Street. I'm not sure what time it's on, but Dan Hoisington said maybe check it out, and then you can come to the program and hear what he has to say about the Civil War nurses, which I'm sure is all very positive. On Thursday, January 21st at 6 p.m., we will have the program Some Strange Stuff in That River, Fishing the Minnesota Past and Present. Photographer and curator of Riverside History and Learning Center, Ron Boldoon, will share a photo journey through the Minnesota River, rich history of recreational subsistence and commercial fishing. So that will be also next week as well. And then I just want to point out, this past Tuesday we had our second to last Castle Library Link Up film series. We watched Psycho. We had our largest turnout yet. We had 16 people who attended, and they were very interactive. They really enjoyed it. They had a lot to say. They enjoyed the big screen aspect of it. We're not movie theater big screen, but we do project it on the wall, so we're a big screen in that sense. We will have the final suspense horror part of the theme in February 9th, and we're going to watch Marnie, which stars Tippi Hedren. So if you that name should be familiar. It wasn't to me as a non-native Minnesotan New Ulmite, but apparently if you're from here, you know that. So now I do too. And that series, it runs every the second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. in the library meeting room. As I said, next month is the last of the suspense horror. They have chosen their new theme. The group decided the next theme will be Westerns. So if you have an interest in Westerns, starting in March, we're going to be watching some Westerns. I do not have the lineup for that yet. I should hopefully have it at the next meeting that I can give you an idea of what we're going to be watching. And as always, all of our events are listed on our website, which is newulmlibrary.org. So legacy, we did have a legacy meeting last Thursday. We approved a few grants. We didn't have very many. We think, well, we've been moved to quarterly meetings. Our next meeting will be in April. We think we're gonna have quite a few grants at that meeting for summer reading programs. But we definitely have enough funds to fund the summer, any sort of summer reading programs, and a little bit into the fall, because there's a bit of the funds become available as of July 1st, but you have to apply for the funds. And so depending upon when you send in your application and receive that, yes, you receive the funds, there's a few months in between there where you don't actually have the new year's funds. It's very strange. So we should have enough to get us through until we get the next batch of money. It also came up with Jessica potentially moving to a full-time legacy coordinator, but we talked about it. She currently is working 30 hours. And we said, you know, with the decrease in legacy funding, we just don't see that as feasible. And she didn't disagree with us. She said, no, I agree, you're right, that we can't really move forward with that. So as a committee, we recommended to the directors that she stay at the 30 hours a week, which you had the directors meeting this morning, and I believe that you guys agree with that recommendation. And then did you send that recommendation to the board? Yeah, so, and the board meets next week, so they'll hear about that as well. And then the one final piece is that Jessica has taken over all of the budget responsibilities and reporting responsibility for legacy funds. So that will hopefully ensure that we don't have problems in the future with overspent money.
Okay, again, two parts of the question. Just refresh me on how we ended up with 112,000 over, and then what exactly are we talking about 50-50 sub-grants and regional programming?
So I'll answer the first question, the second question first.
Okay.
So there's regional programming, and what that is Jessica goes and she finds performers, and then she says to all the libraries, okay, I have this performer, and he's available these dates, and usually she has, you know, like maybe 2 weeks worth of dates. Who's interested? And then libraries say, I'm interested, you know, and however many spots she has to fill, she fills in with that performer. And so she has a kind of a pool of money to work with for what are called the regional programs. And there's a couple performers that she usually has. We talked about at our last meeting about a few performers, maybe for the summer reading program that we might want to consider. And that's open to any library who's interested. That library doesn't have to fill out a grant for that. She just asks, and if the day and time works and the performer's available, then that's taken care of all through Jessica. Sub-grants are individual libraries saying, we would like to have a program at our library with this particular person, and this is the cost, and would you please supply us with the funds? So does that, the difference between the two make sense? So what was decided at the last directors meeting with what was remaining of the funds after some other things had been spent was that what was remaining, half of it would go to regional programming and the other half would go to sub-grants. Am I remembering that correctly? It's been a while since that conversation happened. So that's how they're splitting up the rest of the legacy funds for this year. And then as to how we went over budget, it simply was not being watched. They weren't monitoring it. They in no way had a spreadsheet. They were in no way checking between what we were saying had been spent or was going to be spent to what was available for funds. It was all on TDS's end.
Yeah, I understand. Don't they know at the beginning of the year approximately how much is going to be there for them?
Oh, absolutely. They're told this is what you receive. There's no question. We knew every year exactly how much we were receiving. They just weren't monitoring it to make sure that we were only spending within the amount allotted.
So now you were mentioning a person is going to be looking through that constantly now?
Well, what was kind of making a problem, so the committee would meet and we would say, here's our grants and we approve them and these are the amounts. And so Jessica would say, okay. And then she would give that information to, I believe, Dale. And then he was, and she would ask me, do we have enough funds? We were asking, he's like, yes, we have plenty of money. And he just wasn't confirming that we actually did have plenty of money.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of that will be with Jessica, and she's put together these fantastic spreadsheets, and the committee is seeing every time we meet, this is what we have to spend, this is what we have spent in these categories, this is what we have remaining, which is not happening before. This is the first year it's finally happening.
How are they How are they covering the 112,000?
It comes out of TDS.
Cash reserves?
Mm-hmm.
Just cash reserves then? Okay. All right.
And to break that down, just approximate number, $70,000 was a report that went to the state after a quarter. It was last spring. And the state turned around and gave TDS a number that said, this is how much you have left to spend. Well, they didn't report that correctly from the state level back to TDS, and TDS didn't catch it. And so they, yeah, so that's part of it, but that's not all of it. There's about 35, and again, rounded numbers, 35,000 that simply was overspent.
You know, if you're talking about $1,000 or something, you can understand. When you start to talk six figures, it just kind of
Goes back to
mind-boggling.
our
Yep.
director.
Yep.
He was not paying attention and
Yeah.
he wasn't. And to be, granted, the state made the mistake, but if you're paying attention to these funds
Yeah.
and they're off by $70,000 in one quarter,
You're gonna notice it.
if you're working with this program, I think you should be able to look at that and go, that's not right, and at least
Check
call
on
the
it.
state
Yeah.
and find out. Because if the 70,000 wasn't a mistake on the state's part, then somebody at TDS had made a mistake the other direction. Either way, you should be calling to find out. But they
Fine.
didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna make a $112,000 mistake on our lighting program and then call TDS and ask them to refund us the difference, are we?
Maybe the mayor will come through.
Slush fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it indicated here that TDS is considering that sub-grants be discontinued and that all legacy funds be used on regional program. Have they
That was
made a decision on that?
That
or-
was the decision, and that's what was then decided at the directors' meeting, that no, we would not be doing that. Instead, they were gonna split it 50-50. 50 to regional programs, 50 to sub-grants. That's what the final decision was. And that happened, your December meeting?
So whatever budget that they get bestowed upon them for the year, they say 50% of that is sub-grants, 50% of that is programming, and then when the money runs out in either case, or both, then they just say you can't do anymore.
Right,
Is the 50% for sub-grants, is that first come, first served,
yeah,
pretty much?
pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
there is a committee, so you write up a grant and we review them. And so if your grant doesn't fall under it, we do have the right to say no. We have also looked at grants and said, we think this is really good, but we don't think you necessarily need this. So we've been conscientious of that. So we will sometimes give a decreased amount. But yeah, so it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the money,
Okay.
but it at the same time, it is kind of a little bit first come, first serve.
But in other words, yeah, you gotta be in there early, and then the board is gonna simply decide, okay, we have X money.
Right.
These are the programs we wanna spend it on.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, we did kind of tell people, if you apply in the January, like this past January, for a program in June, we very likely will send that back to you and say, resubmit it in April.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's closer to
Yeah.
when your actual program is going to be held, to try to ensure that we don't have that issue. Barring something, if you were to say, we have to book this performer a year in advance because that's how they work, barring a situation like that, we've tried to put in some safeguards for that.
Any other questions of Mary? Always, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Chris Wiley with the Children's Librarian resignation.
Our children's librarian, Katie Hiltner, has resigned her position, and her last day is tomorrow. She wanted me to share this with you. I'd like to take a moment to express my appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity to have served as the children's librarian for the New Ulm Public Library. I could have never imagined my library career would begin in such an amazing way. Thanks to the library board, library staff, City of New Ulm, and all of the children and families for making my experiences here so memorable. The support and encouragement to continue my library career in a new direction makes leaving no less difficult, as I carry with me so many wonderful memories and experiences. Sincere thanks to all.
I assume we're moving to replace her then.
We will. We're working with Ashana in Human Resources. It will be posted internally beginning tomorrow. We have updated the job description to call it the Youth Services Librarian. Over the time that Katie's been here, she started as children's and over time had taken on the young adult as well. So in keeping with the expanded nature of her responsibilities, we've changed it to youth services librarian to incorporate children's and young adult. So internally for 10 days, we'll see who, if anybody, signs the form that they're interested, and then it would go external. So it could be, I don't know, it could be 6 weeks.
So does it go external if you got enough applicants internally?
If we get internal applicants who are qualified, then it would not go necessarily. It could go external. That's a decision made at the HR and my level.
Okay. But that's at the time after the 10 days, then you make a decision as to
Right.
whether you should go external.
Right.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to the outdoor lighting project.
Vince, yeah, Vince and Elwood Zabel and I met with the designer and the engineer from INS Group of Mankato, gave them some more direction on what we wanted. What we did add from the last time was to put 2 acorn decorative fixtures at the front door facing Broadway. We had talked about just 1 decorative acorn fixture, but to be symmetrical, they said that that would be possible. And I have not received an updated design. They were going to look at the back entrance as well and get a light very close to the door, which is what we have now. And I'm interested in that mainly for security reasons. So the timeline is to get something out for bid in February, have it come back to you to make a decision in March about who we'll go with. Then that has to go to the city council because we're using fund balance for that project. Because by the time they get everything ordered, we're talking summer reading program, we don't want to interfere with that. So we're looking at actually constructing in August and September. So at the same time, depending on what the design or what the construction folks say about what they want to do, are they going to trench or will they not have to? We'll be looking at perhaps doing the sewer project, the sanitary sewer project at the same time. If they're going to be trenching, perhaps that's something we can do all at once. We also need some sidewalk repair. And this would be a good time perhaps to do sidewalk repair. So the extended timeline is actually helpful to go out and get bids on those other projects. But if they don't need to trench, Elwood Zabel is recommending that we just continue to monitor the sanitary sewer system. They scoped it in December. Everything looked okay. And Geraldine, it's buckling. It's bad. It's bad. Just to bring you up to speed, it's bad. It's going to have to be repaired at some point. But being as it's a very large ticket item, we kind of want to postpone it as long as possible. If they're not going to trench.
The only thing about postponing it is it doesn't get cheaper to do it
Right.
another year down
That's
the line.
exactly, I was just gonna say the same thing, yeah.
And you could have run into where it fails too, and then now you've got an emergency situation where you
Right.
gotta.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to fail, that's for sure.
I'd like to see what the construction folks say about how they're going to go about doing the lights. And they are incorporating the Wandagog sculpture. They're going to provide a conduit to the sculpture.
Are they talking about using any of the present day poles or anything now?
No.
Just basically scrap,
Yep,
start from start?
scratch,
Okay,
They are going to go in very similar locations
Yeah.
with many fewer poles.
yeah, that's
But it's all
okay and
new.
stuff, so.
and you'll have basically a 360-degree lighting all the way around the entire building? Are there gonna be black spots?
There's only one spot that they mentioned, and it's there now. It's because of the concrete bunker that faces the Methodist church. So,
That's right,
yeah, that's not terribly well lit.
right.
They're going to put in something there, but they do all of their scatter projections, and there's only one spot that isn't way better than any type of recommendation that they provide. It's still fine.
That's fairly open there though anyway, so, yeah.
Any other questions?
And we move on to the Wandagog sculpture project, Chris?
Well, if you saw the New Ulm Journal, they
Go to the Journal.
Yeah,
right.
we saw that in there.
Yes, the sculpture committee has signed an agreement with artist Jason Jasperson to create the Wandagog sculpture, and it's still intended to be placed in front of the library. Now, on the recommendation of our city attorney, Mary and I, resigned from the committee so that there wouldn't be any potential liability personally or liability for the library to be involved with the project. So the committee continues. They still meet at the library, but Mary and I are not involved in any of the fundraising, and we weren't involved in the contract negotiations. So they're hoping for a launch, a fundraising launch next month or early March at the Grand. So I'll keep you posted as I hear about that.
Hadn't they, at one time, weren't they narrowing it down to somebody else, a different?
They were, an artist in Colorado.
Right.
And the issue came up regarding copyright. That artist and her representation was not willing to turn over all copyright. They wanted to retain that so that they could create more of these sculptures.
I remember you saying that, so that opened it up and then, okay.
Then the committee went back and looked at the other applicants and chose Jason Jasperson.
So do we have to have a set amount of fundraising raised before they proceed? You know, he's gonna get to a certain point where the money is probably not gonna be there, so.
I don't know the
Okay,
answer
'cause
to
it's kinda
that.
iffy, you know, I mean, if they can't get the
Yep.
fundraising, and then how do you pay the guy?
Right. There's enough to pay him to get started. And what he's doing is a painting of the library with the sculpture in place, and it's looking from across the street. And it's going to be a painting that'll be available, and that will help raise some funds. The hope is
Right.
that it will raise some funds. I know the German Bohemian Society has donated some funds as well as Charlotte and Hobart Anderson. So there are some funds for him to get started.
If they don't raise the, enough, what length of time will he wait? Do we have any idea?
I don't know.
Okay.
What will come to you then is the donation of the finished product.
Yeah.
The library board has to accept that donation. So as soon as I get drawings, I will pass them on to you so you know what to expect.
On to the Traverse de Sioux Library Cooperative by Holly Postel, who is our official representative there.
Well, actually, we haven't met since we didn't have a December meeting, so. Well, actually, we met in December and not in November. There really isn't anything new, except that at our meeting next week, we will be receiving a copy from our automations person that was hired a few months ago and has since resigned for another position. So I will know more after that meeting.
I thought I read in here somewhere too that they were talking about disseminating, you know, distributing the workload out to the individual libraries, but then they thought that would just get too messy, and so has that been tabled for now then, or?
As far as I know, I don't know where we're at with it.
Okay. Well, I think I also saw in there, they said let's just give them a chance to get caught up and see if they really still need that.
Yes, well, that was our head cataloging position. That person had resigned before the automation person. And she had been our head cataloger, and we really didn't have a problem with her, except that she did not want to work full-time. She has small children, and so she resigned her head catalog position, and Dale kept her on to work, I think starting this month, like 1 day a week. She really didn't want to work full-time, so she basically stepped down from that position so that we can hire a full-time person for cataloging. And I think that's been done, although I haven't confirmed it with the office. So. And then after that, then the new automation person resigned also.
So they never really talked about shipping part of that cataloging out to the various
We have talked about all kinds of things with cataloging, and we just have not been able to get much different through our executive director over there.
If they do ship it out, would they be funding that themselves too, then paying the
Well,
various
see,
libraries?
that's
Is
part
that
of
where
the
the problem
problem
is?
is
That's where the problem
we're
is.
counting on those funds for them to pay, but if they start doing their own cataloging, then obviously they're not gonna be paying
Right.
in, so then we can't afford the staff that we have. It's a mess. We have, I think, 3 or 4 new board members coming on this month, and I'm hoping we can show some movement one way or another, just to get going on this problem, but
Chris, is the cataloging getting any better?
It is not. With Chris leaving or dropping down her hours to very part-time, she's 2 days a week now. They did hire a full-time cataloger who will start in February, mid-February. Then Chris will drop to 1 day a week. We're back up to about 750 items over there at this point. We did have a director's meeting today and are recommending to the board that a task force be created to discuss all the cataloging options. Everything from what would contracting with Minitex do? Minitex at the state level could catalog some stuff for us. What if we did decentralize cataloging? I think there are 3 or 4 very viable options, but we're recommending that the board create a task force to look into those. At this rate, we're still getting stuff from May, and it's not improving. In fact, we have more items over there now than we did in August, when I was one of 4 who wrote a letter to the board asking them to address some of our concerns. With that turnover in staff like this, it's very difficult for someone to get up to speed, and then, there's personnel turnover.
Wasn't there one of the libraries that threatened something or leaving? Have they said anything else, or what? Forget who that was.
Waseca,
It was
LeSueur
Waseca.
Waseca.
Yeah.
They sent the letter, and over their librarian's objection, they withheld the check, and our executive director contacted the lawyer, and basically we told them that legally this wasn't the way to go. They signed a contract saying they'd pay for it, which they kind of knew was coming, so they said, well, we've made our point and we'll mail you the check, but they're not happy either.
And as far as the contract goes, Blue Earth County's attorney is looking at the TDS contract. What I would like to see is some language in there that gives the member library some leverage. If things like this continue, we have very little recourse when we have 700 items over there. We signed a contract that we would send items. What happens when they aren't returned to us? The language isn't very helpful to member libraries, in my opinion. So the Blue Earth County attorney is taking a look at that, and hopefully we'll have something for the board coming up in the next month or so.
I think it's safe to say that there are issues far larger than cataloging that.
Yes, sure sounds like it.
And one other note from TDS, the executive director, Dale Zelenka, has offered to visit if you're interested in hearing from him. We could put him on the agenda. He'd be happy to come over and answer your questions as well. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Or let Holly know. Either one of us can schedule that with Dale.
Any other questions? On to circulation statistics from.
You see that on page 29. Userful. December is our lowest month of the year all around. It's our slowest month. And so you see the full year to 2015 for computer statistics did drop, and then December as well. And then circulation. Now, I should note that these circulation statistics are simply what's checked in and out at the circulation desk with the barcode. This doesn't include the free books that we give away. We count those as circulation. It doesn't count the newspapers that don't have a barcode on them. We keep track of those. So when I do the annual report, those are included. This is simply what's scanned in and out. It's our automation system, circulations. And then Overdrive for November. And then December, look at that. Overdrive skyrocketed. We went up almost 200. I don't know what happened, but I'm really glad people are using the electronic resources. I hope that continues. I think it's a matter of getting more items into the Overdrive system. We don't have a very big selection right now. Are there any questions about that?
Well, I think any of our physical material or little decrease in statistics, if we'd had our 700 books and they went out just once or twice, that would take care of this.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be
Especially
down.
since they're the more current.
That's
you
right.
bet.
Then we'll move on to the action items. The first one's on page 32. I'll read it. Resolution number 2016-01, first reading and adoption, approving October 1, 2015 to December 31st, 2015 donations and memorials. Recital Section 46503, the Minnesota Statutes, gifts to municipalities states any city, county, school district, or town may accept a grant or devise of real or personal property and maintain such property for the benefit of its citizens in accordance with the terms prescribed by the donor. Nothing herein shall authorize such acceptance or use for religious or sectarian purposes. Every such acceptance shall be by resolution of the governing body adopted by a 2/3 majority expressing such terms in full. The attached description describes donations received by the library between October 1, 2015 and December 1, 2015. Then the resolution be the Library Board of the New Ulm Public Library accepts these donations with gratitude to the donors and approved at the meeting on January 14, 2016. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Now, is there any discussion?
So for, I see Kyle Zeidler donated plates. What are the plates like? Dish plates or?
Yes, they're
or
decorative,
Like money plates where we can print money or what?
They're decorative plates, and we're going to use them for a display. They're Lincoln themed, so we want to use them for a display.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I call the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By the same sign, carried. And we move on to resolution number 2016-02, approving $700 expenditure of donation for books. Recitals, the library requests $700 out of Fund 212, donations and memorials for the purchase of books. These funds, which were donated by Mike and Gigi Nelson Portner in December 2015, will be distributed to library selectors as follows: $210 each to children's, adult fiction, and adult nonfiction, and $70 to young adult. This follows the distribution of the regular book budget. It is expected that these funds will be expended within 6 months. Note, in 2010, the New Ulm Public Library Board approved resolution number 2010-10, approving expenditures of donations received as designated or memorial, which states as follows: for all individual donations of $500 or more, the library director will request authority within 90 days from the library board to expend those funds for the designated memorial purposes identified by the donor. I look for a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Now, is there any discussion?
The $500, when you're talking, it can be broken down like this. We're not talking 500 has to go specifically to children's or adult or anything.
We follow the guidelines of the donor in those cases, and in this case, the donor just requested books.
Yep.
And so I'm asking you to make that distinction of following our general book budget parameters.
So they just gave it to the books totally, and
Books.
didn't designate anything.
Yep, and sometimes they do ask $700 just for children's. Sometimes they do ask that. In this case, no.
Okay,
So then the resolution we just voted on prior to that and approved, all that, the cash then goes into this Fund 212? Okay,
Now we're taking it out.
right.
mm-hmm.
Yep, 'cause
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll call the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign, approved. And finally then, resolution number 2016-03, first reading and adoption, approving $1,000 expenditure of donations for books. Recital, the library requests $1,000 out of Fund 212, donations and memorials for the purchase of books. These funds were donated by the Daniel and Kathleen Sonic family in December 2015. These funds will be distributed to library selectors as follows: $300 to each to children's, adult fiction and adult nonfiction, and $100 to young adult. This follows the distribution of the regular book budget. It is expected that these funds will be expended within 12 months. I'll skip the reading of the next note since we have just read it and I think it's fresh in our minds. So I will call for a motion to approve this request.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Now, is there any discussion on the matter? Otherwise, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by the same sign, approved. Then we have one other item of other business, which I didn't get on the agenda, but it falls under other business. So there's a letter from the Lisa Pelzer, who runs the email and the digital stuff at the city. And I think the sum and substance of the letter is does anybody want a city email address? Is that the sum and substance of it?
And if you do, let me know. We'll get you squared away with that. I don't send very many emails at all, but it does happen once in a while. And you might want to consider whether your personal email then would be, whether you would have to make that available if there was something under the data practices retention.
Oh, yeah.
So if you would prefer to not mix your business here as a board member with your personal email, let me know. We'll get you a city email. That does require that you check that once in a while. So you can think about it and let me know here in the next couple weeks. And
It's basically individual decision by.
it is.
Are there any other items of business that anybody on the board for the good and welfare would want to bring up? Otherwise, if I don't hear, yes.
I wanted to publicly thank Katie for her service to the New Ulm Public Library as children's librarian. She's been
That'd be a
awesome.
good idea. So why don't you make a motion to that effect?
Shall I? Okay, I will make a motion that we publicly thank Katie for her service to the New Ulm Public Library.
This is the children's library, and that's
Yes.
leaving.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Is,
I will
Children in
second that.
okay. I don't think we need a discussion, do we, on that motion? I would call it, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign, passed. I assume that Chris will see that happens.
I will.
Any other item? Otherwise, I'll adjourn the meeting
Dave,
at 4:50.
The only thing I got is I keep wondering about this TDS. And it bothers me, and when you've got Wasika talking up and you've got Blue Earth doing this and we've got everybody, is this a possibility of having to go elsewhere?
Well.
And that's maybe too big, we don't wanna touch that right now.
I think we have to wait and hope
Yeah.
that the board is going to be able to work on this. This is,
I am very hopeful with, I know a couple of our new board members and a couple that left, that the tone of the board will change. And we've kind of had two sides working against each other in the past.
Well, when you sit out here, it sure sounds like there's no continuity anywhere.
It's like Congress, nothing's getting done.
Yep.
yeah. This
And
isn't,
if you think you're frustrated, you gotta sit through those meetings.
fortunately, this isn't the first time it's happened on the board, but I think I think we have to try with everything in our power to keep the regional board together. It'd be a step backward to start splitting everything up. It's just
And
not
I
a good
think
thing.
our librarians have been working very hard as a group to stay together as a group, which I appreciate a lot. It makes everything else in our job easier when people like Mary and Chris are willing to go out and help others in the region and get through some of these problems. And other library directors have been just as helpful.
No, I agree a
See
hundred
that as
percent.
a
The only thing
strong-
is when you see one library board all of a sudden saying, well, we're not paying.
And one of their board
Yeah.
members was their substitute board of trustees at our last meeting, and he was very vocal with his unhappiness. So the message is slowly getting through, I
Getting in
think,
there.
but it's
Okay.
taking unbelievably long.
Do we need to review again what TDS does? All of the things that they're doing, do we need to review that, or so that we have a better understanding of what they do, so that when there's a major problem like this, we can place that problem somewhere? I think
I-
right now we're focused on the problem, and it's a big problem, but I'm also wondering if we all totally understand what they do for us.
Probably not, and in all honesty, I'm not sure that I totally understand everything either. There's a lot going on there. They cover a lot of ground, and maybe in a couple months, yeah, we should just sit down and go through and see what's happened with our new board. And
And I too think that when the contract comes up, I mean, you're the ones who approve the contract to enter into services with TDS. And I can put the old contract in the next packet for you, and then I'm hopeful that we'll have a new contract very soon.
Any other items? Otherwise, I'll adjourn the meeting now at 5:03.